Today we're unboxing a 4th generation iPad that I found on eBay running iOS 6. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get it opened. The listing showed that this included some accessories, I believe some sort of sleeve and some sort of keyboard. So that's interesting, but it was definitely running iOS 6 in the listing. So short of the seller updating it before selling it to me, we should be in store for some iOS 6 fun here. Okay, I definitely see the original box here. I think I paid around $40 plus shipping for this, so not too bad. And okay, yeah, here's the original box here. It does have looks like someone's name and phone number in the top. And here's the accessories it came with. Looks like a Swiss gear little sleeve. Oh, we've got some paperwork in here. Okay, looks like the original lightning cable and a cable and some paperwork for the keyboard. For some reason, it also came with a product key card for Office, Home, and Student 2010. I also noticed in that paperwork there is AppleCare Plus for iPad, so the original owner must have purchased AppleCare Plus for this iPad. And here is the Logitech keyboard that it came with. I believe this hooks on magnetically with like the smart cover latch. But now for the star of the show, let's get this opened up. Okay, wow, looks like we've got some plastic on it. Not the original plastic, of course, because it would have the little pull tab. So we'll slide it out. The back is looking like it's in really great shape. As far as the corners, I don't see any dents there. None there. None on this bottom corner either, or this one. Wow. Yeah, and the screen looks really nice too. Looks like we do have the original charging little power adapter. Let's see I forget the wattage. Is it 10 watts on this maybe? Oh, looks like 12 watts on that. Looks like it does include the pamphlet as well. And it does have the little quick start page, the Apple stickers, and the warranty little card. So I'll just get those put back in here and we can focus on the iPad. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if the iPad has power. Whoa, okay. Wow, well, it definitely has power. It was already turned on. Wow, and we are definitely running iOS 6 at this point. Now, let's see exactly what version specifically this one is running. Of course, around here, we love to have low versions of iOS, like closest to 6.0, 7.0, or whatever. So, launching settings here and going to About. Wow, we have 6.0.1 here. That is awesome. And we do have a 32 gigabyte model as well. We'll go ahead and get the iPad wiped down a little bit so we can kind of like see the condition better. Okay, so ignoring like any of the lint there that came off of the cloth I was cleaning with, looks like maybe there's some scratches in the top left. And maybe some here and some here, but like really great condition screen. Looks like we do have some wear on the back, you know, from laying down on the table. These iPads are pretty easily scuffed up on the back. But thankfully, all of the corners are in great shape. I really, for some reason, I have an ick with iPads that have big dents in the corner. Like, that's kind of all I can focus on. So let's talk about what the 4th generation iPad was. This device came out in fall 2012, right when the iPhone 5 was new. And here I have both of them running iOS 6, looking so great together. But 2012 was a little bit of an interesting year for the iPad. They had just that spring of 2012 came out with the iPad 3rd generation. Now, basically all the 3rd generation iPad was an iPad 2 with a Retina display. It had a slightly better processor, I believe, the A5X compared to the A5. But that iPad was not necessarily bad, but the A5 processor was getting a little bit behind, and when it had to run that Retina display, that certainly hindered performance. This came out in fall 2012, just around 6 months after that one, and obviously that made a lot of people a little bit upset. I believe Apple offered some sort of refund or incentive for people that purchased a 3rd generation iPad before this 4th generation came out, just because it was unfair for them to have purchased a device that would have been so quickly outshined by this iPad here. Now, it's also interesting to discuss the iPad that came out at the same time as this one. And that would, of course, be the iPad mini here. Unfortunately, I do not have one on iOS 6, and I also do not have one in one of the launch colors. This is an iPad mini first generation in the space gray color, which was added in 2013. It originally would have been in this slate color or silver, of course. But this iPad brought a new design, and you can see that here. You can see this one just has a different design with smaller bezels around the sides. It also had these chamfered edges. I believe it also had upgraded speakers. And in some ways, the iPad mini that came out at the same time of this felt a bit more fresh than the 4th generation. While I'm talking about this iPad here, I want to throw on this smart cover so the iPad can kind of prop itself up while I talk about it. So I have the iPad 4th generation pulled up here on everymac.com, and there's actually some really interesting facts about it that you might not have known. So of course there was the 16, 32, and 64 gigabyte options for storage. Those were pretty standard at the time, but I was actually not aware that they introduced a 128 gigabyte configuration in, looks like, January 2013, and they shipped in February 2013. So that's interesting. That would be extremely rare to have one of those. That would certainly be the highest storage capacity iOS 6 device. It looks like this device was discontinued in late 2013 with the iPad Air, but then it was reintroduced in spring 2014, and it lasted again until fall 2014. I believe that was because when the iPad Air came out, they were still selling the iPad 2. And then you have to believe the market kind of was not so hot on the iPad 2 just because it was getting awfully outdated. I brought in my iPad 2 here to kind of demonstrate how revolutionary the Retina display was. You can see lots of grain in especially the smaller text, like the battery percentage and things like that. However, when you bring in the Retina display model, which of course this was applicable to the 3rd generation as well, you can see absolutely no grain or anything at all like that in the text. So it was a huge improvement. Also, this is a random tidbit, but the iPad 3rd generation and older would denote the storage capacity on the back of the device, while the iPad 4th generation did not. So you had a little bit of a simplified look out back. The iPad 4th generation had the Lightning connector, which was just introduced in the iPhone 5 the month prior. And that was really important because the 30-pin connector was getting a little bit outdated. I believe it was like 9 years old at the time. As I mentioned before, the iPad 4th generation shares the same A6 processor as the iPhone 5. And both of these devices received updates through iOS 10. The iPad 4th generation also had improved Wi-Fi connectivity and an improved camera. Just for fun, we'll see if the App Store will open. Okay, yeah, looks like no on the App Store, but I think Siri might work. Let's check. Hey Siri, what's up?
I'm helping people enjoy music, TV shows, and podcasts.
Okay, so yeah, looks like Siri still works. I wonder if it can like do anything with the internet. What were the NBA scores this week?
I found 16 NBA games between last Monday and yesterday.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize it could still, or she could still do this. Okay. What are my plans for this iPad? I'll probably refrain from jailbreaking it, and I'll just sync some apps that I have from saved to iTunes. And I'll probably also sync my music library to this because it is a 32 gigabyte model, so I'll have plenty of room for that. So I just plugged the iPad in to coconut battery to check the battery health, and it looks like we're at 96.5% battery health. So for some reason it will not show me the cycle count. I can't know that for sure, but it certainly appears that this was not used much at all. Another thing I love about iOS 6 is the noises that the interface makes. So let's listen to the sound when you connect the charger. And of course the unlock sound. Unfortunately, I do have a little bit of a hot take about the iOS 6 wallpapers, and it's that I don't think they're that great in my opinion. It's especially always bugged me that this particular wallpaper, the default of course, is a little bit blurry. Like, you can see the icons are of course super high resolution with the Retina display, but that wallpaper is just so blurry. There are a lot of other wallpapers on here that are a more high resolution, and I like them more for this device. So I believe these kind of like textures were new for iOS 6. I kind of like the palm leaf, so I think we might go with that for this device. I have to say, I think my favorite iOS 6 icon is this photo booth. And for some reason, I much prefer the settings icon of iOS 5 and older. Something about like the bordering of this, I just don't appreciate as much. I love how the Notes app has this kind of like sewn leather look to it. And Game Center here almost resembles a pool table. And Newsstand here actually looks like bookshelves. And Calendar, you can actually flip through pages here. And Maps no longer works on iOS 6, but I really love this page curl design at the bottom. I think that was so fun to play with. And you can kind of see the linen background, as I called it, behind there. It really felt kind of like an old school real map. These are oddly hard to find, in my opinion, much harder than anything on iOS 7. I believe that will wrap up the video for the 4th generation iPad running iOS 6.0.1. Thank you all so much for watching, and be sure to get subscribed for more.